Welcome to the lesson on Nazi policy, which kind of means rules the Nazis put in place once they became leaders of Germany in 1933. And we're going to break it down into 4 groups, and today's lesson is about workers. So we're going to learn at things that the Nazi Party and Hitler put in place that would affect workers living in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. So if you're watching this during the corona epidemic, we are using these lessons to fill in your booklet. I will have emailed you the new booklet for this 4 series of lessons, and the name of the booklet will be Nazi Policy. So as usual, at the front of each of the booklets, there are a set of key questions to do with everything that we're going to cover. So at the end of this topic, at the end of the 4 lessons and 4 videos, you can go back and fill in the answer to those questions because you'll know them at that point. Okay. Right, turn to the first page then, double page spread in your booklet. We're going to look at, like I said, 4 groups of people. So Nazi policy and how it affects these 4 groups. In the years 1933 to 39, the Nazis introduced policies that reflected their own beliefs about the role of various groups of people in Germany. They wanted women to revert to their traditional family role, and the young were indoctrinated or brainwashed into Nazi ideas. The economy was reorganised to prepare Germany for war and eliminate unemployment. Moreover, the Nazis ensured control of everyday life by controlling religion, education, family, and work for working people. Finally, under Nazi policy, the Jews were persecuted in order to drive them out of Germany. So by kind of summarising Nazi policy there, I've picked 4 groups of people that would have been affected by their rules: women, young people, workers, and Jews. So you can see I've done a double page spread in your booklets where I've split it into workers, women, children and Jews. So what we're going to do at the end of every lesson, we're going to go back. So this lesson is going to be on workers. We're going to go back and fill in the workers section of that. Okay, so we'll be coming back to that double page spread at the end of every lesson. So you can go over that for now, because obviously we're not going to come back to that until the end of this clip. Okay. So this lesson is all about workers. We're going to look at some rules and groups that were set up that would affect the lives of working Germans. And there's about 3 tasks I want you to complete, and then you can go back and do that double page spreadsheet on workers. So the first thing we're going to think about is, how did Hitler attempt to reduce unemployment? Remember, before the 1930s came the 1920s, and we knew that was a turbulent time in terms of unemployment for Germany. You had hyperinflation, you had the Great Depression. All of these led to high unemployment numbers in Germany. Now, if we were in the classroom, I'd be getting out the textbooks and we'd be reading page 47, because that helps you to have all the information that you need. I'm going to take a picture or scan that page. I'm going to upload it to the group, to the SharePoint for you, and I'll email it to you as well on Outlook. So obviously I'll be pausing this in a moment so that you can read through that page. You can also use your knowledge organisers if you've still got them with you that I gave you at the start of this topic and you took home before the whole lockdown craziness. So read either of those, and then you're going to fill in this diagram that's on the PowerPoint, but it's also in your booklets. It's all about a group called the National Labour Service Corps, or the RAD as they're called for short. So read up on what Hitler was doing to try and eliminate unemployment, and read up on what the the National Labour Service Corps, that will come later, or the RAD. I'm so sorry. It's really annoying because there's so many different groups and they've all got different initials. So I'm getting a little bit confused between them all. Okay, so yeah, read page 47 or your knowledge organiser, and then answer those 4 kind of questions there. So the banner bit, that's actually from your previous knowledge. So what famous slogan did Hitler use in all his propaganda posters and speeches to become Chancellor? Clue, it's got the word work in it because we're trying to look at unemployment. How many people were unemployed in Germany when he became leader in 1933? What was the National Labour Service Corps? So, describe it for me. And I've given you like an idea of 4 things I want you to say about it. So you can just bullet point 4 things in there. What was the aim of the National Labour Service Corporation? Not corporation. What's it called? Corps is like a military thing, isn't it? Oh, I've forgotten what that is now. Some of you may know. And then finally, how was the National Labour Service Corps, or RAD, similar to the army? Okay, so pause this video, like I said, either the photocopy of page 47 or your knowledge organisers. And then when you press play on the next slide, we'll go through the answers. Okay. Right, so what famous slogan did Hitler use? Work and bread, that old classic one. It said that 6 million people were unemployed in Germany when Hitler began to be leader in 1933. That's a really large amount. So one of his key aims, and he promised it in his propaganda campaign, didn't it? Work, I'm going to create jobs, and I'm going to make sure you've got money to feed your family. So work and bread. So one of the first things that he does is he sets up something called the National Labour Service Corps, or the RAD. It's a scheme to give young men jobs, and it was specifically jobs in manual labour, so building, farming, any jobs that are using your hands. They said that it was actually compulsory for men aged 18 to 25, so you had to join. I think that was from 1935 onwards, as soon as you became 18. And you served for about 6 months. It was extended to women in 1939, a bit later, but really we've kind of finished talking about Germany at that point. So they wanted men to have experience in working, because then that makes them more likely to get a job later on. This one was kind of, they were paid to join the RAD, but it was very, very small wages. It was more about the experience than the pay. But you could stay on after those 6 months if you wanted to. I think you'd get a little bit more money. You lived and worked in the same place, so they would be living in camps, sometimes in tents and things like that. They'd be doing drills kind of every day, and then off to build things like roads. They built schools, hospitals and things like that, and then more drills in the evening, and then bed and do the same thing the next day. Famously, they built the first type of motorways in Germany. Now, motorways are important because you can go very quickly on them, which means that you can get from one part of the country to another a lot quicker than if you used a non-motorway road. They were given the name the Autobahn. So Autobahn is kind of like the German word for motorway. Now, the Autobahn is still around in Germany. You can still drive on it. So it had a very long-term impact, and it was obviously well built. And obviously, it's probably been re-tarmacked since the 1930s, I realise, but it stood the test of time. And it was so popular that other countries started to build motorways as well. So that's kind of the lasting impact of the RAD. Okay, what was the aim? Well, the aim that they said men had to join because they wanted to educate young people in the spirit of socialism. Remember, socialism is where the rich help the poor. So by giving these men jobs, they're being helped to have a wage, but also they're being given a key skill, which means they can contribute to society later on. And it's to teach them the ethic of working hard. That's what they said to people, and it was relatively true. Secretly, the aim of the RAD was to reduce unemployment. If you're forcing men to join a group, that means that they're no longer unemployed, so you can cross them off that 6 million figure, even though they're being forced to join this group. And also, by making them do drills and things like that, and learning routine and how to camp outside, and building up their physical fitness through manual labour, they were secretly being prepared to join the army and fight in a war that Hitler always intended to wage. Something called the 4-year plan, which was Hitler's aim that within 4 years of him becoming Führer, that Germany would be able to wage war on other countries. And one of the ways he wanted to do that was to, in 4 years, make sure that the young people of Germany were fit and healthy and able to fight in that war. So this is part of that plan. So how is the RAD similar to the army? Well, they're living in camps, they had to follow rules and routines, they even wore a uniform, they performed military drills, as you can see in that picture there, but instead of marching up and down and unloading and loading a rifle, they were carrying shovels instead, but it's literally the same thing. So very subtle kind of training and brainwashing people into joining the army. So that's the RAD, or the National Labour Service Corps. There's more names now, so it's going to add confusion to the whole thing. Okay, next group is the German Labour Front. They're known as the DAF, just to confuse us even more. So if you think that, I would think that the National Labour Service Corps, because it's got the word corpse in it, it's like corporal, it's like army, and then German Labour Front is just the other one, and that's to do with just workers or workers in general. Okay, so the German Labour Front was essentially an organisation that replaced unions in Germany. What is a union? Most workers are part of a union, a group called their union. It might be given a different name, so there's different unions for different jobs. There's a police union, there's like a union for lawyers, a union for teachers, and then there's different ones within that. So for example, I'm part of the NASWT union, which is based in Wales, so I give them some money every month, and they like just keep me up to date with what, as a teacher, what are my rights, what am I allowed to do, what shouldn't I be made to do in my job. And if I feel like the school or Mr. Thorley or the governors are making me do something that I don't think is part of my job, or making me do something that I'm not being paid for but I should be, that's within my rights. So I can ask my union to come and help me, represent me, or I can ask them for advice. I can say, oh, you know, my boss is making me do this and I'm not sure if I should be. They can say, yeah, actually the rules are you should be doing that. So they can help you with that. If I ever want to go on strike, then the union will support me with that. They'll make it legal, they'll make sure I get paid. Sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't if you go on strike. So it's very important in terms of your rights. So if you have your union banned and taken away from you, then actually you don't have any rights as a worker. You can't go to your boss and ask for something or make demands or refuse to do something. I mean, you can, but your boss will probably just fire you. Whereas if you're a member of a union, they can't do that. So have a little read of page 49. It's not a very long one, or again, use your knowledge organiser. And then just tell me a couple of bullet points of things that are good about this organisation and then things that are bad. So for example, I've just said they banned unions, so that would go in the negatives. Okay, and as usual, I'll put the answers on the next slide. So pause the video here, have a quick read, do a few bullet points, and then we'll go through the answers. Okay, right, so in 1933, the Nazis banned all trade unions and replaced them with the German Labour Front. The German Labour Front became the largest organisation in Germany. It had 22 million members by 1939. So this is essentially, if you're a worker in Germany, the group that represents you. So what was good about the German Labour Front? They actually made sure that workers were paid high wages, so that was pretty good. They made sure that your job was secure. They wouldn't just fire you willy-nilly, but that was only for loyal workers. And when I say loyal, I don't just mean loyal to the company that they worked for, I meant loyal to Hitler, loyal to the Nazis. So if you were, you know, like saying Heil Hitler and putting your swastika flag or band or badge on, you had job security. If you were going around saying, I don't really agree with what Hitler's doing for this or this or this, not so much. And they even made sure that working conditions were nice and that people had holidays and trips on the weekend and had like a gym in their workplace and stuff like that. So actually, if you joined the German Labour Front, it looked quite nice and wealthy. That's because if you look at the negatives, they're doing that to kind of bribe you and distract you from your rights being taken away. So you've got no unions, you're not allowed to strike, And actually, you're being forced to join this Labour Front because you wouldn't get a job if they read your CV and find out you weren't a member of the German Labour Front. So it's all kind of like blackmail and cloak and dagger to distract you from the fact that you don't have any rights anymore. But it's okay because you can go on a cheap holiday, or you've got a gym in your factory place or something now. Okay, so there you go. That's number 3. That's number 2 out of 3. That's the German Labour Front. So I've put on positives KDF. KDF was the final name of a group that had something to do with workers. They're the actual group that would put on these sports and cultural trips and rewards for workers. So let's have a look at them next. So turn the page in your booklet and you'll have a diagram that looks a little bit like this. Make sure you're answering the questions at the top. I think we go back and do those at the end of each diagram. So I've forgotten to remind you, so make sure you're doing that throughout. So, how did Hitler reward loyalty? Workers that were loyal to him, didn't protest, didn't kick off at him taking all their rights away. We've got something called the Strength Through Joy group or policy. They're known as the KDF. This seems to be something that students remember much easier, Strength Through Joy. I think it's because it's such a weird name, but the words are fairly normal. Okay, so this is page 50 that we're looking at, and a little bit of page 49 in the book, and obviously in your knowledge organisers as well. So, I might read it actually as well on the PowerPoint, so you can either pause and answer the questions, or I think you're just labelling the pictures of what the pictures represent. I'd like you to do some bullet points inside the factory that I've made for you at the bottom corner there, and then answer the final question, what is being promised as a reward. What's being promised as a reward here? Oh, maybe I didn't use the picture though. What's being, it's supposed to be a picture of a car. Dang. Oh well, I'll just tell you it's a picture of a car. We'll do that. We'll do it bit by bit, I think. It's a bit easier. Okay, so I'll read it and then we'll go through this bit by bit because I've just realised I forgot to put a picture in there. This was an organisation set up by the German Labour Front to replace trade unions. The KDF tried to improve the leisure time of German workers. So this is when they're out of work, what type of things could they do as a reward? So they would sponsor, which means give money, to provide a wide range of leisure and cultural trips. These included helping them go to concerts, theatre visits, museum tours, sporting events, weekend trips, holidays, cruises. All of these they made cheap for loyal workers who are a member of the German Labour Front. Cruises went to places like the Canary Islands, Madeira and the Norwegian fjords, and cheap holidays were offered in Italy. About 10 million people went on a KDF holiday in Germany in the year 1938 alone. All were provided at a low cost, giving ordinary workers access to activities that had normally only really been reserved for the rich or the better off. So you had everyday, like, factory workers who would never have been able in the 1930s to afford to go on a cruise, are now being rewarded for being loyal workers by being given the opportunity to go on a cruise, but for a lot less money than usual. The Beauty of Work department of the KDF tried to improve working conditions. They would organise the building of big canteens, swimming pools were even put in some workplaces, and sports facilities like gyms, football pitches, tennis courts. All of this to encourage workers to have some fun on their break time, or to maybe stay behind late after work and go to the gym, work on your physical fitness. Why do you think they want them to do that? Kind of, again, it's part of Hitler's 4-year plan, isn't it, to get them fit and healthy for this war. Very clever. They also did things like installing gardens and better lighting in the workplace. Just things that make people feel a little bit better, a little bit more positive when they go to work. So all of these are things that the Strength Through Joy provided people as a reward for being a loyal worker. So if you look at the pictures here, the government gave workers money to go on cultural trips such as. So under those 3 pictures, can you write what they represent, what type of trips and things they're being, tickets they're being given to do things? Then we've got the government also made blank to places like Italy, Canary Islands and cruises cheaper. What would be the missing word there? The government also made blank to places like Italy, Canary Islands and cruises cheaper. Could I mention the word holidays? And then with the factory, what improvements did they make to the workplace? So just give me a couple of bullet points of things they added or built to workplaces to make them nicer. And then what's being promised as a reward here in your booklets, I should have fixed it by now, there should be a picture of a Volkswagen car. So can you just write a little description of what's being promised here and how would they get it? And there you go, that's the last policy that Hitler put in place. So he's got the KDF, Strength Through Joy, he's got the German Labour Front, and he's got the National Labour Service Corps. Those are the 3 groups, 3 policies that Hitler puts in place that are to do with workers. Now the overall aim is to reduce unemployment for sure and to make German workers loyal and happy. But we've worked out that underneath that is a layer of kind of subtly brainwashing people into not wanting to have rights, not wanting to protest against the government because they are happy and feel like they're being seen and rewarded. There's also the subtle training them to be fit and healthy and ready to fight in a future war. So, go back to the double page sheet at the start of your booklets. You're just focusing on the workers box, which should be the top corner. Do those 3 questions for me, please. So name 3 things the Nazis did for workers. Those 3 things I would make the 3 groups that they set up. The RAD, DAF and the KDF. Obviously do their long names. How did they impact the workers' lives? This can be inside and outside of work. So for example, how did the National Labour Service Corps impact workers' lives? You could say that it gave young men experience of working. You could say that what did the KDF do for workers outside of work? You know, it gave working class people the opportunity to go on holiday and so on. You can just bullet point that as well. And then did the Nazis improve the lives of workers? Yes or no? So you can say yes, you can say no, you can say both. Just give me reasons why. And what is the magic number in history? How many reasons should you give me? 2. So if you're going to say yes, their lives improved, give me 2 reasons. If you're going to say no, give me 2 reasons. And if you're going to say yes but no, give me 2 reasons. And then that's it. We're done on this lesson for today. So next lesson we'll be looking at women. And we're going to be looking at rules and policies that Nazis put in place and how did that affect the lives of women. So thank you very much for listening and I'll see you next time.